The sun was just beginning to set over Oak Ridge, a quiet town where people knew each other's names, and trouble was something that came from out of town, not within it. But trouble had a way of showing up when you least expected it. Jack Lawson pulled into the grocery store parking lot, his old but pristine Ford F-250 rolling smoothly into a space near the entrance. The truck was his pride and joy. Not because it was expensive, hell, it wasn't. Not because it was flashy, it definitely wasn't, but because it was his history. The Marine Corps emblem on the back window wasn't decoration. It was a badge of honor. The American flag decal wasn't just a sticker, it was a reminder of why he fought. Every dent, every scratch, every speck of dust on that truck had a story. And Jack wasn't the kind of man to take disrespect lightly. Across the parking lot, 3 teenage boys loitered near the entrance, bored, looking for trouble. Jason, the ringleader, smirked as his eyes landed on the truck. "Look at that thing," he snorted. "Bet some old dude thinks he's a badass." His friend Ryan laughed. Probably one of those veterans who expects people to kiss his boots. The third kid, Kyle, hesitated. "I don't know, man. Maybe we shouldn't mess with it." Jason scoffed. "Relax, it's just a stupid truck. What's he gonna do, yell at us?" With a wicked grin, Jason pulled out his house key and dragged it straight down the side of the truck. The metal screeched, leaving a deep, jagged scratch along the paint. Ryan and Kyle burst out laughing, the sound echoing in the lot. Jason stepped back, admiring his handiwork. "Yeah, that's more like it," he chuckled, slipping the key back into his pocket. Then, as if nothing happened, they casually walked off, laughing, texting, already moving on. What they didn't realize, they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. 15 minutes later, Jack walked out of the store, a bag of groceries in one hand, his keys in the other. And then, he saw it. His steps slowed. His face went blank. His grip on the grocery bag tightened. There, down the entire length of his truck, was a deep, ugly scratch. Jack stared at it. For a moment, he just breathed, long, slow, controlled, because the old Jack, the Marine Jack, the drill sergeant Jack, wouldn't have hesitated to track those punks down and make them regret it. But Jack was older now, wiser. Didn't mean he was going to let it slide. Slowly he looked up, his sharp eyes scanning the parking lot. A few people were walking by, a couple of kids on bikes, and then he spotted it. A security camera mounted high on a pole facing directly at his truck. Jack's lips curled into a tight, knowing smirk. Gotcha. Jack walked straight to the store manager, a younger guy named Ethan, who respected the older veteran. "Ethan," Jack said, keeping his voice level, "I need to see your security footage." Ethan frowned. "Something wrong?" Jack just pointed out the window. Ethan saw the damage, his eyes widening. "Damn! Who would do that?" "That's what I need to find out," Jack said. Within minutes, Ethan had the footage pulled up, and there they were. Clear as day. 3 punks, laughing, keying the truck like it was a joke. Jack memorized their faces. He didn't bother calling the cops. He didn't need to. He had a different approach in mind. That night, Jack drove straight to the first address, Jason's house. The lights were still on. His parents were probably watching TV, thinking everything was normal. Jack parked his massive truck in the driveway, climbed out, and knocked on the door, hard. It took a few seconds before it swung open. Jason's father, a man in his late 40s with a beer in hand, answered. "Yeah," he grunted, before taking in the sight of Jack Lawson, 6 feet 2 inches, built like a brick wall, standing there with an expression carved from stone. Jack didn't blink. "You need to get your son, now." Jason's father stiffened. "What's this about?" Jack pulled out his phone, pressed play on the video. Jason's father watched, the laughter, the scratching, the mocking, and by the time the video ended, his face was red with anger. "Jason, get down here now!" Footsteps pounded down the stairs. And when Jason saw who was waiting for him, the blood drained from his face. Jason stood frozen, his eyes darting between the massive Marine veteran standing at the door and his father, whose face was quickly turning a dangerous shade of red. "Explain," his father snapped. "Right now." Jason stammered, his cocky demeanor gone in an instant. I didn't think it was a big deal, Dad," he muttered. "It was just a prank?" Jack cut in, his voice like gravel scraping across steel. Jason shut his mouth. You think disrespecting a man's property is funny? Jack took a slow step forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the teenager. You think it's just a joke to destroy something that someone worked hard for? Jason lowered his head, but Jack wasn't done. Let me tell you something, kid, he continued. That truck, it's been through more than you can imagine. It's driven across the deserts of Iraq, the mountains of Afghanistan. It's carried men, good men, who didn't make it back home. And you? You thought it'd be funny to scratch your little mark into it? Jason swallowed hard. His father's knuckles were white around his beer can, his breathing heavy with barely contained fury. Jack let the silence stretch, making sure the weight of his words hit home. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he pulled out his phone and showed the security footage once again. Jason's father watched every second, watched his son laughing, smirking, mocking. When the video ended, he turned to his son with murder in his eyes. You little punk! Jason flinched. Mr. Lawson, I swear to you, my kid is going to make this right, his father said, his voice like a storm rolling in. He's going to fix this. And if he even thinks about arguing... Jack held up a hand. Oh, he's gonna fix it, Jack said calmly. But not just him. Jason's stomach dropped. What do you mean, not just me? Jack smirked. Get your friends. We're paying their houses a visit too. By the time Jack pulled up to Ryan's house, Jason was in the passenger seat, his shoulders slumped, his face pale. His father had practically shoved him into Jack's truck, telling him, "You're going to look every single one of these men in the eye and own up to what you did." Now, standing in front of Ryan's house, Jack watched as Jason knocked on the door with shaking hands. Ryan's mother answered. The moment she saw Jack standing behind Jason, her face went tight. "What did you do?" she asked sharply. Jason shifted uncomfortably. Jack didn't wait. He pulled out his phone and played the footage again. Ryan's mother turned red with rage. "Ryan, get down here!" Ryan appeared at the door, freezing when he saw Jason and Jack. "Mom, Get in the truck, now!" Ryan opened his mouth to argue, but one look at his mother and he shut it immediately. Within an hour, all three teenagers were standing in Jack's driveway, looking like prisoners awaiting their sentencing. Jack stood in front of them, arms crossed, silent. The silence stretched. Then, "All right," Jack finally said. "Here's what's gonna happen." Jack walked them to his garage, where he kept buckets, soap, wax, and a hose. "You scratched my truck," he said. "So now, you're gonna clean it." Jason scowled. "That won't fix the scratch." Jack stepped forward, towering over him. "You're right, it won't, but you're gonna clean it anyway, because that's called respect. And then, when you're done, you're gonna figure out how to pay for the damage." The boys muttered half-hearted apologies, but Jack wasn't finished. "You're also going to wash every single car in this neighborhood for the next 2 weeks." Ryan's mouth dropped open. "That's not fair." Jack's brows lifted. "You want to know what's not fair? A soldier getting blown up by an IED after fighting for kids like you to have the freedom to act like punks. That's not fair." Ryan shut up. Jack's voice softened, just a little. "I don't expect you to understand what it means to serve, but I do expect you to understand respect. And if you can't, then you'll learn. One car at a time." The boys looked like they wanted to argue, but the glares from their parents shut them up. And so, with sponges in hand, the punishment began. For the next 6 hours, the boys scrubbed, they waxed, they polished. By the end of the night, Jack's truck had never looked better. But more than that, the boys weren't laughing anymore. Their hands were raw, their backs ached. They finally understood. Respect is earned, not given. As Jack stood by, watching them pack up, Jason hesitated. Then, clearing his throat, he muttered, "Mr. Lawson, I'm sorry. We were wrong." Jack nodded once. "Damn right you were." Jason swallowed. I didn't get it before, but I do now." Jack clapped a heavy hand on his shoulder. "Then you'll be just fine, kid." As they walked off, Jack finally allowed himself a small smile. Because some lessons, they stick. And tonight, 3 kids learned one they'd never forget.